ahead and kick this off with our first agenda item. Getting back to the, there we go, with the approval of the minutes from June 10th.
I'll move that we approve the minutes for the June 10th meeting.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the minutes are approved. Our first item of business here is to consider of the final subdivision. Approval 105, 107, 109 Forest Trail.
Do we have any comments from the public?
Oh, sorry.
No? Douglas, do we have any comments?
We did receive 2 comments. I've just heard those 2. None, they were both in relation to the issue of the MOU, the MOU between the Isle of Palms Water and Sewer Commission. And they basically were objecting to the sewer treatment facility of Wild Dunes being moved to the 41st Avenue curve.
With some reasoning?
I think they felt like basically to summarize, that they felt like their sewer issues should stay in their community, which is away from residents, farther removed from residents than the 41st Avenue facility. I think that would summarize it in my mind.
Douglas, we should make those something to attach to the record. I know the other day at Public Safety, they weren't able to get the comments to the committee members before the meeting, and Councilmember Ward had administrator from those into the record. If you don't have them handy, send it to me as well. We can put them on the back of the minute.
We could either do that. I could read them fairly quickly. They're maybe 2 or 3 sentences each comment. You want me to go ahead and?
I think just as a practice, that's probably a better thing, because if they were in the room and we were having an actual live meeting, they'd be able to say those things on the record. So just as a practice, because that's what Public Safety did, I think we should do it too.
Okay. Everybody's okay with that. Let me read these. The first one is from Garrett Krause from 1 Intracoastal Court. And he says, I want to know more.
Yeah, you're clipping in and out, Douglas, I think. Or else it's just me.
No, you are coming in and out. It's hard to, you can't hear your every word.
Well, I don't know.
You can try and read them as you can. And I would still think we should need to send them to the committee, and I can extract from them what I don't hear and to put them in the minutes.
Okay, let me, it'll be difficult to run the meeting if you can't hear me, so.
I think it's just when you're just backing away, Douglas, you might have to just kind of sit over your computer.
Okay, so it's like a mic thing, is
There
everybody?
you go.
Yes.
You're fine, that way you're fine.
I won't move, I'll stay right here. Okay, so first comment is from Garrett Krause at 1 Intracoastal Court. He says, I want to know more about the MOU for moving the Wild Dunes Poop Station to Waterway and 41st, which is the neighborhood that I live and am building my new house. Our health is already at risk with one plant in our area. Why would we bring Wild Dunes poop into our neighborhood too? They have 5 acres of land with no neighbors to deal with where it is, unless you're planning to let Wild Dunes develop that 5 acres, which of course I have issues with and big objections. That's the end of the first comment. Second comment, is everybody hearing that okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. Second comment is Lawrence Milley from 105 Sparrow Drive. And he says, why should we move the wastewater treatment plant from Wild Dunes to the corner of 41st and Waterway? Would it not make more sense to move the plant on Waterway to Wild Dunes, seeing how the plant at Waterway is surrounded by homes and the plant in Wild Dunes has nothing around it? Living next to the plant on Waterway, I was awakened at 5:30 a.m. this morning, like many morning, including Sunday, by a vacuum truck loud noise. I have also been smelling very foul odors. It is my opinion the odor is hydrogen sulfide, which is a health concern for me and my family. Why do we want to move a wastewater treatment plant into our residential neighborhood when the old one is a standalone with nothing near it? I plead with you to come up with a better solution than putting another wastewater treatment plant in my neighborhood that could be built in the open field where it is at Wild Dunes, especially since the water company has been such a bad neighbor to me and my family and acts above the law.
Wow.
So that's the end of the two comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Vince, we ready to go into the subdivision?
Yes, why don't we go ahead and move on to that new business?
Okay, this is, hold on just a sec. I've got Rick on the line calling. Rick? Hey, good, how are you? We're in the meeting. Okay, I think Rick will be trying to join us by phone.
All right.
Okay, this is the subdivision at 105, 107, and 109 Forest Trail. And this is a request that received preliminary approval back in April 2019. There was a series of conditions that they had to satisfy before they requested final approval. Those primarily had to do with satisfying stormwater provisions of the NPDES program, which is administered by Charleston County. The other issues were extending the infrastructure, both the sewer line and the water line. They had houses that were over property lines that had to be demolished. And they needed, the sewer lines and the water lines extended. So this property is currently configured as 3 lots. The proposal is for it to be configured as 5 lots. The total acreage of the property is 2.08 acres. When they started this process, the minimum lot size requirement at the time was 17,500 square feet with at least 70 feet of width and 110 feet of depth and 30 feet of frontage on a cul-de-sac. You'll remember that shortly after this application, that ordinance was amended to basically double the size of the minimum lot size to 35,000. But this request should be reviewed under the ordinances that were in effect at the time of the initial application. So we're looking at 17,500 square foot requirement. We have there I think is Rick joining us. We have received confirmation from Charleston County Public Works that their plan satisfied, their stormwater management plan satisfied the NPDES drainage requirements. They were given the go-ahead to install that infrastructure. They have installed the infrastructure. The county's inspectors have been out and seen the installation, and they say that it meets the minimum standards for the stormwater infrastructure that's been installed. They have extended the sewer lines, they have extended the water lines, and they have removed the existing homes, so there are no setback issues. There are still a number of historic trees that will need to be preserved in accordance with the tree preservation plan. And the city staff has reviewed this request for final approval. We believe it meets the standards of the codes and therefore recommends approval with the condition that a note be placed on the plat indicating that all trees will be preserved in accordance with the city's tree preservation ordinances. And that's all I have. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I see the applicant's engineer, Mickey Seabrook, is with us in this meeting, and the applicant himself, Mr. Banning, is also in this meeting, so they could also answer any questions that we have.
So Douglas, the one question I had was that we addressed the drainage of the lots by their plan as putting in some drainage pipes and some fields and some other things. But where does that water go to? And this may have nothing to do with the actual project that we're talking about right here, but my concern is that we're going to be moving the water away from those lots. Where is it being moved to? Is it being moved out to the street or out into a canal? Or
So the property has an existing ditch wrapping around two sides of it. And that probably, and it's my understanding that ultimately the water is leading to those ditches. But I don't know if Mickey is able to unmute himself. Maybe he could better answer that. Are you there, Mickey? Or Lewis? I see Lewis Seabrook's also on either one.
Douglas, this is Mickey. I'll be glad to answer that question. You're correct. There is an existing drainage canal on two sides of the property. The requirement that the county established was that the peak runoff rates would not exceed the peak runoff rates after these lots were subdivided would not exceed what was there before for the original configuration. And that was a condition of the approval by the county and subsequently by DHEC for the county stormwater permit, as well as the DHEC NPDES permit. So basically the requirements for basically all new developments are that you don't increase the rate of runoff, the peak rate of runoff from a site.
thank you.
This is Rick Banning. I'll also add to that there was an easement with an existing ditch that caught a good bit of the stormwater runoff that comes down the Forest Trail Court there. That we actually it's an IOP ditch with an IOP easement, and there was an old pipe there, and as part of the improvements, we replaced that pipe with a newer pipe and improved that ditch as well to handle the stormwater, not only for our properties but the stormwater coming down Forest Trail Court as well.
Great, thank you.
Is that the easement that bisects lot 19A?
Yes,
That's correct, yes.
Any other questions? Well, with that, Douglas, and the city's recommendations, I would move that we go ahead and approve these subdivisions as proposed. And with the caveat from the city of adding the information to the plat.
regarding the tree preservation.
Yes.
I would second that motion, if that was a motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right,
So,
It's Rick, aye.
Okay. Mr. Denton, was that you that seconded the motion?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
okay, so moved. Rick, did I hear you on the phone?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, great. All right. Do we want to move on, or is there any more discussion, or?
None with me, I'm satisfied.
Okay.
Rick, do you want to, is it easier for Vince to continue to chair the meeting?
Say again?
Is it easier for Vince to continue to chair the meeting? Looking at the screen, or are you good to take it over, or what do you prefer?
Either way. Well, let me do a couple and see what happens.
All right, you take it over, and then if it gets squirrely, we'll get back to Vince.
All right.
Thank you, Vince.
You bet.
Okay, so we had a motion.
I think we had a unanimous vote, didn't we?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So we're done with that one.
Yes.
Yeah. So Mickey, Lewis, and Rick, thank you. You all can, that'll be it for you in this part of the meeting.
Okay. Thank you, gang. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, next item.
So the next item on the agenda, and this was, hopefully everybody got the revised agenda. I initially forgot this, but this is the discussion of the new assignment regarding the tree fund. And I think today, if we could just introduce this subject, and I'll tell you what I know about it, and we can generally discuss it, but we could really put it on, give you a month to think about it, and we could drill down a little bit more at next month's meeting, if that's okay with everybody. The request, or the matter that's been sent to you, is the use of the city's tree fund. This is money that gets paid to the city when somebody, and it's typically a development, takes place. They remove a tree and they cannot physically fit the tree back on their property, or they don't want to fit the tree back on their property. They are required to pay the same amount that it would cost them to plant the tree. They pay that into the city's tree fund. Currently, the city's code is fairly restrictive in how that money is used. It has to be used for beautification, and it has to be used on public property. And so the comments that have been made that I've heard is, should that be relaxed, or should there be something else done, that's, I guess, more creative with that money. The city has, it's not that it doesn't get used. There's the palm trimming that happens, gets paid for out of that fund. Also, as trees die on the Plana Palm avenues, that money gets used. It also has been used a little bit for plantings at the recreation center, but it's always, I would say there's not really a established program for how that money gets spent. So in my mind, you would have kind of on one end of the spectrum of potential changes, you would have basically the option of removing any restrictions from the funds so that it would just go to the city general fund for council to put into their budget and spend however they see fit. That would be kind of one extreme of just putting the rest of the money. Kind of a middle of the road modification might be, and I do know that at the time this ordinance was enacted, the thought was, and I think it was a good thought, that this money, if it's coming from trees that are being removed, it should be used to buy trees and to replace whatever was removed from the community. I think kind of stretching on that concept a little bit, the Planning Commission could find that one of the benefits of trees is that they help with drainage. So maybe to modify the language a bit, that it could be used for either beautification or drainage projects. As we all know, I mean, drainage is kind of at the forefront of what the city is pushing for now. And it's expensive projects. And I think, I think it kind of follows the logic to allow that money used for drainage as well as beautification. So that's what I would kind of classify as a middle of the road modification. And then I would say on the other end, the kind of creative end of the spectrum that I've heard about is the idea of creating either a matching fund, kind of a grant program, whereby residents who wanted to do projects on their property could apply either to the Planning Commission or to, an ad hoc committee of sorts with proposals and basically competitive requests to be granted money out of that fund. That would be something unique to the city. We've never done anything like that before. And, I think that avenue has, obviously there's room for mistakes and, it could be that the city ends up funding a grant that you shouldn't fund, or it ends up being something that you wish you hadn't done. So there's a little bit of risk there, but I think you have the opportunity of, if it's a matching fund where the city pays 50% and a private individual pays 50%, you may get more bang for the money that's in that fund. So those are, what I would kind of put out there is just ideas and ideas that cover the spectrum of how they may be able to be used. But I think the council is just looking for suggestions from the Planning Commission on what might be viable use of that money.
So Douglas, would our to-do from you be to come back in a month for the next agenda and with different ideas?
Yes, I think if there's any kind of just off the, right off the bat, any kind of direction that the group likes without, you just kind of know that you gravitate in a certain direction, that would be good to know. If not, then we could just think on it for a month and try to come up with.
At a minimum, I would certainly recommend a name change from tree fund. Having had several clients who've had to pay into the tree fund for tree removal and replacement, and then to find out that the money is appropriated for trimming palm trees kind of really upset some people. While I think we don't have any room to replace trees. For instance, if you were to cut down a 16-inch oak tree, you're obligated to replant 4 4-inch oak trees. There's nowhere either on a lot or on the island to put those trees. So that's why I think the fund has grown so large, but maybe not referring it directly as a tree fund might help soften that impact. We can come up with another name for that deal.
Somebody's echoing.
Sorry.
Just another idea to throw out. One of the things we're talking about today in this natural resource section is this green space concept. And I don't know where that's been over the years. But what about maybe even considering some money for a green space fund that could, instead of matching residents to spend, what about trying to flip this the other way and try to raise money from residents to acquire green space or to maintain green space on the island?
So Scott, you're saying actually partner with private individuals to buy green space and hold it in trust kind of thing?
Or just as grants. I mean, I think all of us probably live places where the communities are either donate, raise money, they set up conservancies in partnership with the city to basically acquire property or maintain property that's already been purchased to either beautify it, try to make it into a park for resident or others use. But maybe it looked like we had $100,000 or so into this fund, which might be a start. But my guess is there are a number of residents on the island that would, consider if it was some kind of a conservancy or start to acquire some green space, that there might be some appetite for that. And this might be worth a look.
Do we have dollars in the budget for beautification in general, like at the rec center, around the city hall, those sorts of things?
Lisa, there is every year there is a landscaping contract, and I would say that's if there is a need to beautify, and comes to mind, the front beach landscaping kind of got a little bit down, and it hadn't really been maintained to a very high standard. Council wanted to improve that, so they bolstered that line item in the budget. So that's probably the closest thing to kind of a beautification line item. It's just landscaping maintenance, really.
But they don't use this fund to pay for that line item.
Generally not, no.
Okay.
Has anybody ever looked into 401c3 for the city? It's basically a center where people can donate money and get tax relief.
The idea has come up, and I think there's a reason why we can't do that, I believe. But Debbie would really be the one that to answer that.
Yeah, this would be good seed money to start that. If we had a place where people could donate and not have to worry about starting a park, donating so much to start a park, but at least feel good about a certain amount of donation.
Yeah.
Has the city historically, as pieces of property come up for sale, either approached the seller or looked at the community to try to buy a piece of property? There's one down on my end of the island that sitting on Palm Boulevard, and I know I thought there'd been some even conversation about that little triangle piece of property, but and I know that there was one, Douglas, I know we worked years ago on another one that was considered by the city for purchase to turn into a little park or something. I don't know what the history is on the island for acquiring green space, if there is any at all.
So historically, we have the only real pot of money for that has been the Greenbelt money that goes through that's administered by Charleston County. That is the money that we use to acquire the area next to the Harris Teeter. And we have looked at, there were other parcels we looked at that time. I will say that it seems as though the value of property has outstripped the amount available in those funds.
Yeah, which is why it'd be a good idea maybe to see if the residents have an appetite for it or not. But it's just an idea. We don't need to flush it out or spend the whole meeting doing it. I just thought I'd toss it out there. Should we look into that 401(c) option, Rick, to see what you were suggesting?
Yeah.
I think you're
Wouldn't take
referencing
much
a
to find out.
501c3, aren't you?
Yeah, yes, I think it is a 501.
Sorry, got the wrong number.
Yeah.
Has there been any consideration to having a advisory committee, a citizens advisory committee? Seems like this would be an appropriate topic for a group like that if there's more people that want to get involved in community activities. I know they delegated this to the planning, but
Yes, there was, Bill. That idea was also, when it came time of who to kind of get input from, that idea was tossed around as well. And I think it was just that it would be easier for you all to mull it over, but if that was, I don't think that would be problematic.
And maybe it's following on what Bill's saying, it's something that is a advisory group of residents that will submit to the planning commission, because I think overall having the planning commission involved gives it that bit of consistency, because we're going to follow, our 10-year plan, our strategy, and try to implement those things that fall into what we all decide on as a city, as to where we're going. And I did want to comment, I like your option B. I mean, the option 3 kind of opens it, the option C would open it up. But option B, I was just thinking off the top of my head that there's this additional money that's available, and you had budgeted for $15,000 to use for the trees, but now we have additional money. Anybody that's ridden down Palm Boulevard lately and has seen all the ruts that are just in everybody's yards all the way down the street. I mean, this is a good opportunity that probably funds from this could be used to do something to help those, not just the property owners, but to beautify that whole street as you go down it, to fill some of those ruts in and do some things with that.
And likewise, Waterway Boulevard is in the same boat. The Waterway Boulevard path is another place that really needs some help.
Yes.
Do we know for a fact that there is no more room to plant additional trees? Is that something that's been studied? Is that what I'm hearing is the issue? We have a surplus of money and there's not enough space to plant new trees?
Marty, no, there has not been a study done of that. And I think that, just kind of off the top of my head, if we were to take a approach of, that would be one of the directions of, let's plant kind of as many trees as we can reasonably fit in. And maybe that was the thought when it was created. We could certainly just stock up the city's parking lots. There's not a lot of city land available, but City Hall parking lot, the parking lots over across Public Works, the Front Beach parking lots, the rec center. That's never been a concerted effort, so maybe that's also in the realm of possibilities of really taking it and maximizing the number of trees that get planted.
Yeah, that was my initial thought. And then my other question of clarification, what if there was a major storm event, and there may be other funds that could be used to replace trees in that case, but let's say we had a storm that wiped out 20 big trees that were accessible on city property. Would this be the bottom?
Marty, I can barely hear you. I don't know if others can hear you or not.
No, you're low, Marty. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Let me try these headphones.
So I think Marty's point was, yeah, that is better. That after a storm event, would there be funds available for public trees? We do have recovery, a recovery account, disaster recovery funds. I would say though that trees and beautification would probably be way down at the end of that priority list after a major event like a hurricane. So, maybe that's also a point to keep on the list for consideration, is truly keep in for trees after a storm.
To me, this challenge, to me, it's like, it's not a real good fit for the planning commission, I don't think, to sit and try to figure out where to put trees. I think, there are people that are highly motivated to do that kind of stuff. And it even gets emotional at times. I think the idea of us putting together or helping form a citizens committee and then having them come to us for the final idea seems to work really well. I would think that would work well. It seems to be a good idea to me. Just a thought.
Hey, Rick, can I throw out one other, maybe not so great idea, but just thought I'd throw it out there anyway?
Yeah.
What about, this is more of a tree preservation, since we just saw, I don't know what, 85, 95 of them got cut down or trimmed to, you know, not so aesthetically pleasing. Is there any correlation here by maybe taking some of this money to start putting some of this electrical infrastructure underground? And start actually moving towards a, you know, where we should be both on all of our aerial infrastructure, moving to more of an underground. I don't know what $100,000 gets you as far as mileage of putting stuff underground with the construction, but you know, maybe that in and of itself will probably preserve trees and or the, you know, the aesthetics of what happens to the ones that are remaining after the power companies come through every couple of years. Just a thought.
It's a good comment. That also fits with what I think would be of that money. You know, the money, so it's $100,000 after probably, I don't know, 7 or 8 years of accumulating. So it is not a huge pot of money. So I would, you know, I would hate for there to be months of work and, you know, committees advising committees and recommending to committees, recommending to council. Seems like, you know, some just kind of basic recommendations like what you all have come up with would be very useful.
So you would be
Roughly
looking,
about 160 trees if we were to plant new.
wow. So you would be looking for recommendations from the planning commission for broad topic changes to the ordinance, or what are we?
Yes,
trying
that
to
would
do?
be,
Is that what you're trying to say, Douglas?
yes. Yeah, if the policy should be tweaked, in what direction should it be tweaked, and you know, what's the follow-on course of action? If it's it would just depend on what you all thought was the direction to go with it. If it's to create a committee that people apply to and kind of a grant, that would be one set of sequence. If it's, you know, and as Ron kind of mentioned, it wouldn't go far for planting trees. It goes even a shorter distance if it was drainage infrastructure or power infrastructure. You know, it probably is one street crossing of stormwater pipe every 7 or 8 years. So it's not a huge pot of money, again.
Yeah, but again, I think, Doug, the $100,000 could be, I don't know, flowers in a park, could be an entranceway, it could be a mural, could be a lot of things. And if you remember even the mural down at the front beach, what, you know, the discourse that went along with that, it's not easy to come up with a solution or an application for a $100,000 beautification project on the island that will get, you know, that will have a majority support. I just think for us, I mean, we have a lot of other things we got to do. To recommend a definite thing is just kind of scary to me.
So the request would not be any specific projects. It would be a tweak, if necessary, to the policy of should it
Okay, that's good.
Should it only
That's
be
good.
used for beautification of public property, or should it be used for something broader than that? That's the only thing
Okay.
we're looking at this point. Not
Okay, I
where.
misunderstood you. All right, boss, I misunderstood you.
If I think I've got a pretty good list of things to just put down for discussion next month if we want to give it some thought and move on. Unless anybody else has any other thoughts at this time.
Let's move on. vote.
All right, we ready to go to comprehensive plan review?
Yes.
Okay. So, first thing under that bullet is just a general review of the timeline. And to summarize that review, it would have us at each meeting brainstorming revisions that we want for the next meeting on one element, and then reviewing the revisions for that were talked about at the prior meeting. So it kind of has us talking about 2 elements per meeting after this initial element. I don't know if there's some of these elements may take longer, some of them may be quicker. I've tried to kind of sequence it so that hopefully the strategic plan, that's going to be the other tricky part of scheduling, is timing the strategic plan through council, and also the census data, which should really be available here shortly. But that's going to be a challenge to the sequencing. But in general terms, we agreed last month that we would talk about just scheduling, and that's kind of it. If we were to be perfectly on schedule, we're looking at almost a year. I think we're looking at 10 months from now.
Douglas, you're looking at this being a reevaluation, not our 10-year update. This is not our 10-year update.
Well, the way we've laid it out is it is our 10-year update.
It is our 10-year update.
Yes. A review, if we chose to do a review, that literally can be done, at 2 meetings where you just read it and you say it looks good, or everything is good for 5 more years until it gets updated. So yes, what we've planned here is a 10-year review.
Are we looking to get input from other organizations? I mean, like for natural resources, the Department of Natural Resources, or any input from City Council or other groups as we go into an area that you would expect them to have some expertise or interest in? I mean, are we doing this in a vacuum?
Well, historically, we have gotten input from outside groups, in varying degrees depending on the issue. But yes, it historically has been a somewhat collaborative effort, with the Planning Commission being the driving committee, and then you pull in resources as you need.
When will we see the results of the forum that was held in January, where all the Isle Palm residents participated in a public forum to give their ideas about things that they thought were priorities in the community? That was done. We held that 6 months ago, and I don't know if there's ever been a summary of the meeting.
Yes, I think there has been. I think that.
Has anybody else seen that?
I can't remember what the ultimate product of that was, but I can assure you that if it hasn't happened before, it's not like somebody is actively working on something. I can tell you that. So it either has happened and it's available, or it's not going to happen.
Wasn't the scope of that strictly for the marina, though, not the whole island?
It wasn't in the conversation we had at our table. I don't know what others got into. Well, we talked about the sewer. We talked about the rec center.
So Bill, I think that was a prior, are you thinking of a prior visioning?
This one was in January, as I recall, last part of January.
There was a visioning one a couple of years ago, but I thought the one in January that the mayor called was strictly for the marina vision.
Yeah, that's my
recollection. Let's say that it was just for the marina. I'd still like to see the results.
Yeah, I think they're out there, Bill. Yeah, there's.
Well, where are they? Because nobody else has seen them.
I haven't seen them.
They're online.
They're online.
They're on the city's website. Isn't that right, Douglas? We're the same where the minutes and the agenda are.
I would assume so.
Well, you can say they're there, but nobody's seen them.
Let me pull them out and broadcast whatever we have. So anything else on the scheduling or Bill, did you know, we were kind of talking about pulling in experts. Does that answer your question, that we would do so as we needed?
Yeah. I would think that we would want outside input other than just the 7 of us making the decisions.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Have you seen any schedule from College of Charleston about the strategic plan?
I have not, other than I know it is in this fiscal year that we just began, whatever it is, 8 days ago. And I think that it's supposed to be done in the beginning of this fiscal year. So I would say that it's going to start soon.
Can we get a schedule from them?
Yeah, I don't think there's been a formal schedule put together, but I will see what's available and let that be known.
It would be interesting to lay that alongside of ours and find out when there's going to be tie-ins. You know, they alluded to the fact that they want to tie into our comprehensive plan at some point in time.
Yes, I know that is the objective.
I guess the other thing is, do we need a kind of process as to how we go about doing this rather than just picking a topic and running through it? Is there anything else, any other methodology we could use in order to make ourselves a little more efficient?
I don't know if that's a question for me or just rhetorical for the group. But what's here is what's historically been done, but there is no, if it should be done in a different way, or you will want to do it in a different way, now is the time to sort that out.
Well, Scott had some ideas, and I thought maybe he could just make a couple comments about some ideas he had as to how we might want to proceed.
All I did, Rick, and I think everybody got what Douglas sent around, had some comments on it, it was just a little bit of a structure instead of us having to kind of go through the 40 or 50 page document and kind of weed through it. Maybe take an approach where the first step would be, let's make sure that we're all on board and everybody's okay. Maybe even run it by council with the whole visioning and mission statement. Because if what's in the plan is not supportive of the vision or mission, typically that stuff is handled differently and outside of the scope of these plans. And then maybe we have 33 goals and 70 strategies in this plan, which is a pretty hefty number. And they're weighted differently by the topics. I thought maybe taking a section at a time and just going through some initial gates of whether or not yes or no it supports the vision, what's the current state of the goal and the strategy, whether it's green, yellow, red, is it on track, is it in trouble, or does it even apply anymore? That would be a second gate. Third would be, what is the measure of success on each one of these, and whether or not they're assigned or funded. Now, those would be some typical gates I think you'd go through on setting goals and objectives and strategies. So it was just it was an easy format to try to start gating these or triaging these. And I think, Douglas and Rick, you said some of these are 10 years old, some of these are 5 years old, some of these are even go back to prior plans. And if they're still as stated in here as a to-do, I think the question might be, why are they still, are there hurdles that we can address in these strategic plan or in this comprehensive plan to overcome those goals and try to get some of these completed?
So Scott,
go ahead, Douglas.
Were you envisioning that review of goals and strategies as each element comes up for discussion? Or were you thinking of just doing those without kind of getting into the text of the of each element.
Well, no, I think you can do it all at it's the same time. You know, take the first one about, you know, for an example, we've got, you know, conclude whether obtaining an improved flood insurance CRS is feasible. You know, is that still relevant? Is it, what state is it in? What's your measure of success? Is it assigned and funded? You know, those are just some simple gates that I think we might want to go through. And I don't know how long that particular one has been in the plan. Has it been in there for quite some time? And how do we measure success on those things? And I think, Bill, you even sent a note out about that today. So each one of these could be it would be a little bit of a kind of a process to be able to go through these instead of having just an untethered kind of discussion about them. First go through the gates and then have the conversation. If they need to be changed, change them. If they don't, then they stay.
Any thoughts?
So I was envisioning that we would do these basically at the same time. You know, that when, for instance, the natural resources section is on our agenda today, we would start with either the goals. And then I think that'll make the review of the text basically easier, but that we would just talk about, that's the way we would basically review the natural resources section. Based on that discussion, we would edit the text of the goals, the strategies, and the text of the element itself. And then next month, review those edits. And then hopefully that would, you know, depending on the element, some will be more complex than others, but that would then set that element aside and we'd move on to the next.
Douglas, who will then take charge of actually preparing the document? Is that something your office is going to do?
Yes. Yeah, I would, unless somebody else really wants to do it. It's been done multiple ways. That's the way it's been done the last couple of times, where I would prepare the draft, you all would review it, edit it, and then it gets basically forwarded. Comments, thoughts?
Well, is there any way we get to use Scott's approach along with yours as well? Is there anything?
I come with stuff they were similar. I just had some more quantifiable gates, I guess, to kind of go through to evaluate them. Sounds like the same thing, Douglas.
Yeah, get the benefits of both in one package.
Yeah, I think that's the plan.
Yep.
With that, do we want to start on the goals and strategies? Well, or do we want to start with the introduction and vision statement? That's how it is in your packet.
Let me ask a question. What would happen, and this is a hypothetical question and certainly not one I would want to exercise, but what would happen if we went ahead and did a vision statement and turned it over to council for their editing or auditing or exception or whatever? Have you ever done that kind of thing before, prior to the final?
No, there was, this vision statement was created, well, 18 years ago. The first edition of the comprehensive plan did not have it. It got put in 18 years ago and it has remained unchanged since. So it hasn't been, basically, I think people have been satisfied with it and felt like it was kind of still remained the same vision. So
okay,
no.
so if we stick with it, then we're pretty much secure in thinking that the council will accept it.
I think so.
Okay. So it's good. I mean, there's no need for us to go backwards on that one.
Not, so I would say, personal opinion, but I would say that in recent years, drainage has become such a focus of the city. And I kind of read the vision statement and I see that at the time it was drafted, erosion was the huge mountain ahead of the city. To me, that over the years, the city has created a beach maintenance fund and a tax to basically fund that work. So to me, it is a less kind of stressful mountain ahead of the city now than it was when it was put in there. And I could interject drainage kind of right in to the statement where erosion was in that statement. It appears that erosion was the number one concern at the time. And to me, drainage is now the number one concern. So that would
Well,
be,
actually,
that would be
it's
my
like a-
point for discussion. Should erosion come out and drainage kind of come in?
Well, what it's, you know, you could say it's like erosion won, we lost. Now drainage is battled.
I think you probably want to leave erosion in there, but add drainage, because we're always going to
I
have
think that's a good idea, Vince.
erosion issues.
Yeah, those aren't going away.
Nope.
We have anybody that disagrees on adding a sentence to that statement that covers drainage concerns?
We don't really have anything in the vision statement to accommodate vacationers. Do you think something should be there for that, to accommodate tourists?
Isn't that in there with the commercial uses already? Those are commercial uses.
Yeah, it says maintain it as a good place to live and to visit.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm sorry, I didn't see visit in there. We can add visit.
So Douglas, does the drainage piece parlay off of the extensive development term?
Hold on, before we, Bill, you see,
Here's what I added to it when I was thinking about that. I added a sentence saying the island also provides beach access to surrounding communities as well as vacationers from around the country. That make any sense?
yes. Yeah, I mean,
It does.
yeah, I think basically it says now it is a wonderful place to live and visit, and that should remain intact and in good condition.
I think that's fine the way it is. Yeah.
I agree.
I think you have to keep vision statements typically are a sentence or two.
I'm not sure what you're saying, Douglas.
I think it's already, I'm just saying it's already, I think my opinion is it's already well covered in here.
And where do you see it covered?
Where it says a place to live and visit, remain intact and in good condition. I think that's what Marty was saying. It's already in there.
Bill, are you looking at the vision statement, 5th line down?
Uh-huh. Wonderful place to live and visit, remain intact and in good condition.
Yeah, but Bill, you want
I'm not gonna make a fuss about it.
You want to include visitors, right?
Yes.
It is a big financial impact on the island in terms of income. Just to have included them in there.
All right, I don't think I heard consensus. Marty, what was your comment? Would you restate that?
I don't want to say I maybe wouldn't restate it, but I think the vague nature of it is sufficient to cover visitors.
Well, I was thinking that there was an additional point that you wanted to add. Additional.
Oh, no, I was just saying that it was already in there.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought you were saying that there was another point that you wanted in that statement.
Nope, I'm good.
Okay. All right, how about the introduction itself? There, to me, there is kind of a history on the plan itself that I think we would want to update. That's the third paragraph down that talks about basically the different iterations of the plan. I think what we're embarking on now would probably lead to an additional sentence at the end of that paragraph. Other than that, I didn't really see much that would need to be.
What about either elaborating on it or taking it out, the Biggers Waters Act?
Yeah, that was, I would tend to want to take that out. That was
What was that again, please?
the Biggert Waters Act. That is referenced in that third paragraph. That was another, there was a lot of concern about what that was going to do to the flood insurance costs for residents. And it was a topical thing at a time of review, which I would agree is kind of, it's been punted to some degree endlessly by. So I would think we would take that out.
Yep.
Yeah, I would agree.
Douglas, when we're done with this, will this be an interactive document where people might be able to click on links and go to different areas?
Yes, should be. I think the version, I might be mistaken, but I think the version online is where it references the beach management plan, and I think you click it and it goes there, I believe.
I hate to go back to the Charleston thing, the College of Charleston thing, but it would be nice if they could give us a copy of a typical that they've done for somebody else, where we could get an idea what their format is, the physical format and structure. So that we're somewhat consistent with them when the time comes to blend the two of them, or put them side by side.
Well, so Rick, our format is pretty well dictated by the state law. All kinds of plans. So these elements, the minimum elements are required by by state law.
Is that the same for the strategic plan?
No. So it will be, they say that it will be dovetailed and kind of a counter document, but we couldn't, I guess we probably could, but we have to have at least these elements in our plan. So we couldn't vary kind of wildly on our format.
Okay. I had nothing else on the introduction. I don't know if anybody else did.
I didn't either.
Okay, we ready to move on to the natural resources, and do we want to start with the matrix of goals? That might be the simplest method to start our discussion. It might take the most kind of brain horsepower to do that initially.
Sure, where the key issues are and then the goals and implementation strategies.
Yes, I think it's page 26 of the packet.
Yep.
I'm losing it.
Is everybody good with it? Does anybody want that on their screen instead of the faces? I think I could do that if I needed to, but.
Yeah, I'm able to toggle back and forth.
Okay.
Yeah, I have it in front of me as well, but certainly wouldn't hurt to put it up there if it was easy.
Likewise.
Let me see if I can get this.
I just want to say when we get into this, I thought that what Scott sent over was good and useful. And the first thing that I realized as I looked at the spreadsheet is that it's difficult for me to know the measure of success for a lot of the strategies. I mean, for a couple of reasons, but a lot of it is, knowledge of history and in-depth research that I probably just need to do independently, but also maybe due to some vagueness of some of the strategies as well.
Cool.
All right, do we want to start with goal 3.1 and strategy 3.11 dealing with the CRS rating? And as just a kind of primer, I think some of you were on the planning commission when this strategy was kind of fleshed out. And basically at that time, there were there's kind of a menu of items that would get the city to the next better rating under the CRS program. And to summarize that process, at the time, the Planning Commission concluded that the kind of pain associated with getting that additional class was the pain outweighed the gain, basically, was the analysis in short. And so it was analyzed and it was decided to leave as is at that time. Now, having said that, we have this kind of wild card coming towards us in the form of new flood maps, whereby, and this was a little bit of a different exercise, but a related exercise that the Planning Commission went through, where all of the new flood maps lower all of the required flood elevations significantly throughout the island and actually take large chunks of the island completely out of the floodplain. So that is going to have some type of effect on our CRS rating, but it gets so convoluted and complex, the calculation of how that's formed. I don't know. I can't tell what the effect of that new map is going to be on our class. And I had a brief exchange with Bill today and shared with him that we have so the way this works is FEMA shows up and basically does an audit of the current condition of your community. And they see what you're doing, they look at your rules, and they give you a community classification calculation. And that's coming up in November. And we also will have the maps probably coming into effect about that same time. So in the plan, just kind of another footnote, in the plan, I think we are I think at that time we were a class 7, and I think we're now a class 5. So that's kind of a primer on CRS. And that may be too broad an overview, I don't know.
Okay, so for purposes of the plan, is this something that we have any influence under, or is this just something that happens?
Well, so part of the calculation is how strict your flood regulations are. And the Planning Commission definitely is kind of in the driver's seat of that calculation. Some of it we just don't have any control over, really. It has to do with the acreage that you're regulating and things of that nature that you can't control. But the levers that the Planning Commission and really the city has control over is how stringent the flood codes are within the city.
Well, I think we ought to leave it in there, but is this the appropriate section for it in natural resources?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, it's in there because flooding is discussed in this section. And, I guess that's it could go, and a lot of these subjects are going to have this where you could put it in housing. There's an element dealing with housing. There's an element dealing with community facilities that kind of talks about the infrastructure. So it could potentially go into another section. But it's in here because water flooding is in this section, and I think that was the thought at the time.
So Douglas, quick question. If we're looking at, if, say the wording and all this and the strategy and going through these gates, if the goal is conclude whether obtaining an improved flood insurance community rating is feasible, can we do that? Is that a yes, no, or is it feasible?
Yes, it is.
So that's a yes. And then pursue improving the CRS rating when feasible. What does that mean? Is that the ordinances that you're talking about, tightening the ordinances or compliance?
Yes, it is. And that would be, where I think we had that discussion several years ago. I think we will have a new landscape after November and after the new flood maps come to pass. So in my personal opinion, the Planning Commission should put this on the list of things to do once the flood maps are enacted. So I think it is something we want to look at.
So what would I guess to Marty's point, what would how would we define a measure of success on this?
To me, it would be improving a class.
That's the class 5 or get it up to a better class?
Yeah, I think yes, I think it would, currently the goal would be a class 5.
Okay, we're at a class 5 or we're at a class 7, you said? Or?
Well, in the plan, we're a class 7. I think we're currently in a class 6. The goal would be to go to a class 5.
Okay.
I think we are 5 and Sullivan's is 6. You need to go up the numbers, not down. We want to go to 6.
Should that be the goal then?
I'm just taking notes while we're doing this. Yeah.
I think we're at a 6, Bill.
I thought we were at 6.
Yeah, we are.
Maybe I'm looking at old data, but what I saw, we were at 5.
We're not clear on whether we need to be going up in number or down in number? Or
This, one of the handouts with the community rating system part says verified class 6.
Yeah, hold on. And we do, Bill is confusing me, but I'm fairly confident we want to. I think class 1 is the best. Are you saying the opposite, Bill?
I'll defer to you.
We'll take a second. I'm going to confirm that.
Well, again, this letter says it talks about the different, that we were at a class 7 and we're going down to a class 6. So I think 1 is the best,
Yes.
not the other way around.
I now agree with you. I looked at the brochure.
Thank you, Bill. You get me doubting.
so is it moved to class, the measure of success would be go from 6 to 5 or go from?
Yes.
6 to 5.
Okay, we're currently at a 6.
By when?
Now you're really getting it there, Rick.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, seriously,
We want to
that's what,
improve the rating, right? Whatever
Sorry,
our
what were you saying,
rating,
Marty?
improve it.
I was gonna say that was kind of what my question was on some of
Yeah.
these. I know it was kind of a joke, but
No, I think that would be good to talk through that.
how specific do we want, or how specific should we be in these goals?
So,
You want a goal to be measurable, and that's measurable.
And so current status, I guess we are green or yellow, or we're yellow trying to get to a green, or what do you say? Or
What do your colors represent?
Yeah,
well, I think green is you're in good shape. Things are running just fine. There's no jeopardy. Yellow is we're in jeopardy. There's a little bit of trouble or we need to course correct. And red is simply it's no longer applicable, or there's no funding or resources to achieve that goal or target, strategy, whatever we want to call them, so that it's something that we would evaluate, either trying to obtain a corrective action or discard.
so
And these are very subjective. They're not, this is for discussion on just how do we feel about them. If we're in good shape now, then we can still call it a green. We're just trying to get better.
So I think that we need the new maps to be enacted, and we're waiting on FEMA to tell us when to do that. And we need to have a visit by FEMA to do their calculation after the new maps have been adopted. Once those two things have happened, we will then have our scorecard, and that would be the time to analyze exactly how many points we need to gain to get to move up a class. And, like I said, that's kind of what the commission did the last go around. So I would think that will happen that those two things will have happened by 2021, sometime in 2021. So I would say we're yellow. We're kind of on hold until those things happen, and that the plan would be that we do that in 2021.
Okay.
Great.
Scott, are you filling this in?
I am. So just to recap, support vision, yes. 2020 status, yellow. Well, I was going to give us a green just to start out in the green here, but yellow's okay. The measure of success at class 6 target is to move to class 5 in 2021. Then the next I got a note that says new maps enacted and visit by FEMA required. And then assigned and funded, yes or no. I don't know what our status is on that or how we feel about that.
One thing,
I think it's I would say that it is assigned, but there's funding is not necessary. NA on
It's not necessary. Okay, funding not necessary.
well, can I just make a comment? If we go back to the goal of 3.1. You're saying consider whether it's feasible. I think that's not a goal. To find out if something is feasible.
Okay, so is it to pursue an improvement? Is the goal to pursue an improvement in our rating?
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you the language there is what happens is, and it probably will, I don't know that it'll happen this time, but what happens generally is we go to a 5 and then eyes are then on a 4. It's kind of is the way this has historically happened. I mean, we were an 8, then we went to a 7, went to a 6.
Wow, that's great.
We may be able to go to a 5. So I think it's one of those things that as the landscape changes, you kind of are always looking to improve when you can. So I think that's the reason the language is the way it is.
In the scheme of things, this doesn't mean a lot of money to any one resident. When I look at my insurance policy, a 5% savings is about $50 a year.
So Bill, that was the point that basically, that point was made when you all looked at it last time, and the consensus was that making properties non-conforming was not worth a $50 savings.
Right.
So
In
that's,
fact, I went out to a couple insurance companies and checked with them, insurance agents, and they actually said that there'd be no change. But
What do you mean by that?
But if the town, what they told me was if the town improved their rating, it wouldn't affect the price of my insurance.
For your basic flood or for your excess flood?
For anything. That's
Well,
what I was told.
the federal program gives you a discount for it.
Yeah, Rick, you should see on your flood insurance bill, and it is somewhat cloudy how it's written on different bills, but you will see a discount, and it's called different things on different bills. But I think folks pretty universally do see that savings on their bill.
Okay.
Anybody else? Bill, can you confirm or can you
It's
confirm?
on my bill for the basic flood. There was no discount on the excess flood.
Okay. I think it's $50 a head. It's full.
Say that again, Rick, $50 a head is what?
But at $50 a head or a resident, it's still worth pursuing.
Yes.
Sure.
And I think, I'm guessing, Bill, that your flood insurance is probably cheaper than a lot of folks. I mean, you're an elevated, I don't know, I think probably all of you have houses above the required floodplain. I think that 5%, I hear horror stories of people with $10,000 bills. And obviously for them, it would make a big difference.
Oh, yeah.
So
Okay.
and it's leave the verbiage alone. Sounds like it's good the way it is.
I think it is, but
I think so.
Okay, let's move on.
all right, next goal, 3.2. Improve water quality of the ocean, waterway, creeks, and surrounding island. I think that's a lofty goal, and personally would think
Yeah.
important to stay in there. I don't think anybody have any issues with the goal itself.
Wait a minute.
Go ahead.
What about what about air quality?
Would that be a separate goal?
Yeah, that would be a separate goal, I think.
Oh, okay.
Why don't we just note that? We can come back to it.
Is that goal 3.6 potentially? Okay, so it seems like the goal is good. So the 3.21, strategy 3.21, that again is kind of a snapshot in time. The 319 non-point source pollution grant was the one where we, the city hired a firm to basically test the waters, and then it ultimately led in testing the sources of pollution to determine what the sources were. And at the end of the day, they did find that the primary source of fecal coliform was animal waste, and particularly deer, raccoon, and other things that we kind of didn't have control over. So and dogs was in there, but it wasn't as much as you might think. It was really animals that you didn't have control over. So the concern at the time was that it was septic systems, and I think it did tell us at that time that it was not septic systems. So that, to me, that strategy is a bit dated, and I don't know if it would be replaced by a different strategy or just deleted in its entirety.
Well, if you go to goal 3.2, we can, for us to change the quality of the ocean, that's a pretty big deal. It's just to improve
A real big deal, yeah.
To improve the water quality.
What about strategies of deterring pollution in the areas? Like from the, I think anybody that's gone to a beach, I mean, I agree with you, Rick, trying to boil the ocean here is not going to work, but maybe there's something we can impact around our surrounding areas. Anybody that's walked on the beach, we can see that there's a lot of pollution that runs off the beaches into the waterways here.
Yeah, I know, improve the water quality of what we're dumping into the ocean would be a more attainable goal, I guess. The other thing is there's no metrics. There's no metrics to determine what's bad and what's good, or what would be a goal. We've got a lot of data, but we don't have somebody telling us what's attainable, what we could possibly affect, or how to do it.
Right.
Well, Rick, there were recommendations in that 319 non-point source pollution study, most of which were just ignored, as far as I know. I mean, there were things in there about how people could clean up after their pets better, how you could put foliage in some of the creeks to try to catch some of the runoff, not putting fertilizers on lawns. There was a whole bunch of recommendations in there, but I don't know that anybody ever tried to implement any of them.
Yeah, but there was no metrics, Bill, to say this is how it is today and this is what you want it to be tomorrow.
Well, they may not be measurable, but they were certainly goals that could be accomplished.
All right, well, I'm with you. I mean, if we feel we can get, BOD or COD or whatever we want to use. But again, I think we need to have a metric so it's attainable.
Should this be reworded to do a little bit more specific of what Bill, you and Rick were just saying about the either animal or beach or other waste and things that are impacting the surrounding areas? I mean, fertilizers, I don't know.
Well, the only way you're going to make it measurable is if you continue to have more studies done, and that's expensive.
Yeah, but how can you have a goal if you're not going to measure whether you're getting to it or going away from it?
Right. Or a strategy of how to fix it.
Yeah. I mean, you can say, all right, we get everybody to use less fertilizer, the CO2 levels will certainly go down. Well, if you monitor lows and see that their fertilizer's gone down to the IOP, then you can imply that the water must be better because there's less fertilizer being used. Then you don't have to worry about taking a bunch of samples and doing a lot of expensive testing.
Hey, Douglas, question to you. Are you suggesting maybe this is something we can't impact this particular goal, or?
Well, in my kind of noodling on it, so just kind of for the benefit of the group, we do have this ongoing testing that DNR does. We have monitoring stations in the back waters of the island. They're, and I think it's quarterly that they're taking water samples. And you will recall that we looked at this a little bit when we looked at septic systems, and the results, it's parts per million, and the results are all over the board. So it's challenging to see trends, to say the least. But if you kind of put a trend line through the middle of these, they were generally flat. To me, I guess I'm thinking that there should be some strategy. I think we did that. Exercise for septic systems, and it was a good exercise, and it kind of confirmed, I guess, what we had hoped. But there was not really, I now see this as a goal in the comprehensive plan, but I don't think we did it to be responsive to this plan. We did it to look at septic system influence. Right. And I wonder if it shouldn't, if somehow that strategy shouldn't be in there and be, kind of put out as what we should be doing, is maybe annually collecting and analyzing the water quality data from DNR and ensuring that it's not showing an increase in pollution, basically.
It's there as strategy 324.
Yes. Yeah, and I don't know, and it might be that basically satisfies what I think we can kind of do, in my mind.
So you're suggesting replace all these strategies, just adopt 3.2.4, and that covers the landscape maybe instead of all these combine these? I thought 3.2.2, 3.2.3, and 3.2.4 they sounded similar, but I don't have the background. Seemed like they were all monitoring strategies, but for
Right.
different, yeah. So I thought maybe there was an opportunity to combine some of these.
Well, I definitely think 2.2 and 2.4 are almost identical. 2.1, I think, is now kind of dated. 2.3 is something that, you know, we do participate. We do participate in water quality programs and
Yeah, it feels like the last three strategies there, 3.2, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, well, last four strategies, 0.5, are probably more of what we're doing right now. And I would agree. I think I'd stick with them, but I would also look at this goal again. It has me concerned that we talk about improving the quality of the ocean water and creeks surrounding the island. I don't know whether we can improve it. I think that we can monitor it, and then we can have interventions to correct it if there's something wrong. But, you know, and I guess maybe you can say improve, because when you get down into the public awareness and education, yeah, you probably could do some improvement of the quality of the water. But yeah, okay. So I just contradicted myself, so it's probably good.
so I would agree.
Yeah.
Leave 2.3, 2.4, and 2.5.
Right.
Delete 2.2 because it's basically redundant, and I think 2.1 is outdated and basically covered by 2.3.
Yep, I would agree.
Great.
Just for scribing purposes, we're going to have the new, yeah, we're eliminating the first two, keeping the last three.
Correct.
Okay.
I think so.
Got it. Okay. And if we started going on these three, then to the right, they all support the vision.
I think
Yes,
so.
I would say they do, sure.
Okay. They're all in what kind of state do you think?
I think they're all, you know, we just did 2.3, and I guess it's now been 2 years ago. I would say that they are probably, and I don't know, again, the colors, yellow appeals to me as where they would naturally fall.
Isn't green in process though?
Well, I think green is they're in great, you know, they're in really good shape. There's not much to be done. Yellow is more of a bit of a jeopardy, or some things have to be done. And then red is, you know, we just discarded, so I'm not even going to put a color on those. That's it. So you think there's more to do on these, Douglas, on each one of these? Call them yellow then?
Yeah, I think at least 2.3 and 2.4, we should probably have a frequency that we're going to do that. You know, it takes some effort to pull it all together, to put it in a format to be really looked at for historical trends. And I think that it probably is worth our while to do that. And I would say maybe every other year.
So for both 2.3 and 2.4, those should be the measure of success is that they're done every other year, frequency?
Well, and I would say that the measure of success is if they are, well, would that be that water quality is not getting worse, that water quality is remaining the same or not? Would that be the measure of success that they show?
It's up to us to define it, I think.
To me, that would be this, I would say we're successful if those are coming back indicating that the water quality is either improving or at least not getting worse.
Improving or maintaining quality.
Right.
Agreed.
Okay. And frequency is check it every 2 years?
I think so.
Okay. Now, is this something, are these items that need to be funded?
Yes. So the state is doing, and I may get this wrong. I may get the dates wrong, but I think the state is doing it twice a year, and we are paying for that to be done. I think it's every other month. So we're paying for additional. They're paying for some, and we're paying for additional monitoring.
That's great.
So if the frequency is every 2 years, it's being done every month though?
Well, no, the data is being collected every other month, but we are not basically looking at that data. And if they have a spike, they will tell us. If they, if they need to close down an oyster bed, and that's how the data ultimately gets used either. And it's been a long time, but they have closed down swimming in the area of the county.
So what's the every 2 year frequency about?
So that's when we take all of the data points and we put it into a trend line over those 2 years. And we verify that we're not trending in the wrong direction.
Yeah, so trend established every 2 years.
Right.
Or reviewed every 2 years. Got it. Okay.
And strategy 3.25, this kind of again is, and I don't want to get too kind of a snapshot of current time, but I do think that there is a strategy. It always seems to be something, for a while there, it was plastic on the beach. Then it was smoking on the beach, cigarette butts. It just seems to me that there is always some public awareness program going on to get people to not pollute the ocean.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how to put that into measuring or funding or a time frame. That to me that truly is kind of ongoing, and it's hard to know what the issue will be of the day, but that is something that never seems to go away.
Is a measure of success, I don't know, something about reducing debris on and around the island, or debris and refuse or something?
Well, I guess that's measurable.
Measure it, except for just.
As long as we have beach Santa, that's measurable. I don't know that we can always count on it being measurable.
When you talk about public awareness, what about offshore drilling?
Yep, and that's that was at least in the text. again, I don't, this is always a fine line of being too current. Yeah, being too current versus, but I don't know, that may never go away. So maybe,
I think that's one of those things you got to keep a constant lookout.
yeah.
Now, what do we think about the status of this one?
I think it's continuing, just as Douglas said. I mean, you see it on the city's webpage, you see it at Facebook, the city posts about beach cleanups, and I think it continues to ongo.
So would we call this one a green because of all the community activity and effort around trying to clean it? Keep it clean?
I would say yes.
Yeah, I think that we're kind of in my mind, we're in good shape now.
Okay.
What about enforcement of fines for littering?
Well, I can tell you that the only thing I hear is and this became a very hot topic during the idea of banning smoking on the beach, that basically it was extremely difficult for the police. They would have to see somebody throwing down a cigarette butt in front of them, and it just never happened.
Right.
Sure.
Well, this strategy is about creating the public awareness. I think I know where we live on 9th, there's tons of debris on, every weekend that is left. And I think that the beach sweeps are evidence that the residents are picking up visitor trash every week. So I think we're trying to create public awareness. I think what's happening though is we still are picking up after a lot of other people.
It's an uphill battle, I guess.
Pardon me?
It's an uphill battle,
Yeah.
I guess. Kind of no end of it. So back to Rick's point, should we add a strategy about offshore drilling and being, I can't remember. I know that was in here somewhere, and maybe it was in a different section. Does anybody recall where that was mentioned?
No.
No.
Okay, bottom of page 26. In 2015, the city council approved a resolution expressing the city's opposition to seismic testing and offshore oil and gas development off the South Carolina coast. Additionally, in 2015, the city became the first community in South Carolina to ban the use of single-use plastic bags in commercial operations. We want a strategy to continue to oppose seismic testing.
So you'd have to formulate the strategy as something that you're going to monitor those activities that would either legalize or support offshore drilling, and that in doing so, we would be proactive with our legislation to be sure that those changes don't take effect. I mean, that's the only way I can see actually doing something with that.
It's a tough one.
Yeah.
Put a cap on the number of SUVs.
Yeah, there you go.
Any consensus on that? Do we want to, is it too murky and unmeasurable to have in there?
I'd leave it out for now.
All right, I don't hear any.
So the air quality's off. Is that what I hear? I'm sorry, I was updating the sheet here.
So would air quality? I was thinking air quality would be goal 3.6.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah.
it seems to me like the next one is also related to water. How about 3.3? Very close to 3.2, but I think
I personally like how that's written, and that looks pretty good, really.
any other comments? Generally, again, to me, I guess it's going to the right, supports the vision statement. These are, there's a date of 3/3/1 for 2008. I can't tell you if
Should we take the year out of these just on the strategies to update them? It's the same assignment, same year.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, I don't know, because there wasn't I can't say that there was an actual program created.
What did the year mean, Douglas?
That was the date, that was the goal date of accomplishing that strategy.
Of accomplishing it or including it in the plan?
No, for accomplishing it. That was the date of success, or the goal date to have it done by.
Hmm.
Yeah, I guess with the one up above 323 and this 331, it is this whole measure of success and is it funded? How do we measure success? That's Marty's department.
On 323?
I mean, we didn't really fill that in, but I'm having the same thing. I think 323 and 331 are similar, aren't they? The strategies for that goal and this goal are very similar on education and awareness. I hope I'm on the right one here.
So 323, I think we said that we were going to look at that every other year, and success would be if.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm renumbered them already, Douglas. My fault. I'm thinking 325, 325 and 331. The old 325.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
my mistake. Sorry about that.
I think they're very, very close, and I don't know. 325 is listed as ongoing. I think the same would be true for 331.
Yeah.
Almost the same. It's almost the same goal.
Yeah, I think we could probably blow away 325.
But 331 is more definitive.
What was that, Marty? You think eliminate 325 and just rely on 331, you're saying?
Yep.
Correct.
Works for me.
I think to me, one is dealing with pollution specifically. I think the other one is probably could be kind of more structural in its objective.
On the island and around the island?
One, to me, I'm reading 325 as keeping the water clean, and reading 331 to kind of keep them intact physically. Don't allow things that would damage the actual dunes or the marshes physically. But I guess it also gets to animal waste, which is pollution and trash. So yeah, they are definitely melded together there. Are they too similar? They're probably too similar. If it's taking this many people this long to pick the difference out.
So do we want to just go with 331?
I think
Okay. All right, so eliminate 335 or 325, and we'll rely on 331. Just a question, since this talks about, I guess, marshes, dunes, and beaches, I don't mind, I was thinking about the neighborhoods. It says remove the waste and trash from the beaches, but it also spills over. That's all right.
I think we need to take the 2008 date out.
I did, yeah, took that out. So do we agree 325 is eliminated?
I believe so.
Yep.
Good with me.
Yeah, I think we have consensus there.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think the water quality is covered fairly well in the other. I guess,
Okay.
what are we down to 2 now in section 3.2, and then
Yeah.
it's similar enough to 3.3.1, and they're both very difficult to evaluate in terms of enforcement strategies. So yes, I'm comfortable with getting rid of it.
Okay, done. So status, green, yellow, red.
I think we're yellow. I think that's kind of ongoing.
Measure of success.
Again, I mean, I don't know if literally you could get to tonnage of, Scott, do you do the beach sweeps?
I do.
I
I
mean,
mean, your ultimate goal once something like this would be zero trash on the beach. You know, that's a lofty goal. Zero trash, zero butts, zero animal waste. That would be it. We just go.
Or we could say a certain reduction. We could say a reduction of what it is today, 50% of what it is today, or 10% of what it is today, or.
Scott, do you feel like it's, I mean, in your experience with it, I don't know if anybody else does.
Oh, I've been to probably, I don't know, a dozen in the last few years. It's pretty bad. I don't know what it's like. I haven't been on one in a couple of months, but I just patrol the neighborhood around here once in a while around my house and a couple of blocks, and because of the parking, and it's. I have to say, with a cigarette ban and with I think a lot of maybe peer pressure out on the beach, I think the animal, and I run the beach up to 46th or further. I think the animal waste is way down. I think the cigarette butts is way down. So I guess in light of that, that would mean the trash is down too. But it still has a waste to go. Yeah.
Do you get the impression that it is actually measurable, like by tonnage or some metric?
I don't know. I think this one, unfortunately, is a bit subjective because unless somebody's out there counting bags of trash, the only other possibility would be, for what is it, John and Lisa pick up, but that goes in the trash bin.
Yeah, I mean, that's good.
Yeah, that's good.
Is there a point person with those sweeps that could answer questions about the measurable nature of that?
Susan Smith on council. She's yeah. Maybe we put in a placeholder about, I like the idea of 50% improvement of where we are or something, within a couple of years. And it's definitely going in the right direction for sure.
I don't know. I think over on my end, it's getting worse. That's just, I'm not a part of any structured sweeps or anything like that.
Where are you, Marty?
I use the 21st access a lot, so I'm really close to public, the public county park area. I would say it's probably gotten progressively worse every every summer.
So why don't I talk to Susan about a metric that we may be able to identify and measure? You know, it's interesting, kind of enjoying data to some degree. The idea of the beach Santa literally counting the cigarette butts every day of his trip, you know, is very intriguing to me, and I think you can use that to kind of see and measure, are things being successful. So why don't I, on that one, on the measure of success, let me talk to Susan about a metric if she can come up with one.
Okay.
Good idea.
Just a thought, and I don't know if we go outside the administration, but on this one, the community's been, I think, pretty highly involved in the last couple of years. Is this general government, building department, and IOP community involvement or something?
Is there an actual name for Susan's group? I mean, I think I hear it referred to as the beach sweep.
It's the beach sweep, but there are a lot of other people. I know, like a couple of the realty firms that I'm familiar with, Adopt a Highway. We pick up trash quite a bit. There are quite a few efforts on the island to control the debris.
Should that maybe be a strategy to basically
engage the people,
those groups, and support them? You know, if there's some way that, and I know that we kind of do, with Donnie's, with the Public Works, but maybe we do kind of adopt that as a strategy and support it in some way that,
I'll just share that. I think the other side of that is I think people are, some people, and I'm a bit in that camp too. It seems like our beach sweeps had been increasing quite a bit because more debris was being left from the community where the root, and we celebrate the beach sweeps, but the real root cause is that we're having more people leave more trash to cause the beach sweeps. And that's we're not getting to the root cause of what's leaving all that debris, people walking away from all of their trash.
I agree.
is that an enforcement?
It probably is.
Is there something?
Again, this is, and sometimes it's just common sense, pack it in, pack it out, but.
Right. It's a behavioral change for sure, if you can do it.
I guess that's got me wondering if the police shouldn't be just an inquiry to them about any assistance, what the city could provide to them that would help them better regulate it. I don't know what it would be. I mean, I'm guessing it would be additional presence on the beach in the form of beach services officers. I don't know. I tell you what, I feel like Susan Smith is our ace in the hole on this one. So let me just talk to her. Let me pick her brain about, and Scott, if you're already kind of in that world and participating, maybe the two of us would talk to Susan about all of this.
One other thought, and I think this goes to the enforcement side. Somebody brought it up that, I think you hear on some of these other islands that once word gets out that somebody's been tagged with a couple of tickets with some heavy fines, that normally changes behavior. I don't know what Chief Cornett or the police would say about the ability to do that. I know he's got bigger things to focus on than somebody throwing a piece of trash right now, but that does tend to change behavior.
Yeah.
And the visibility too of, at least we've seen a couple of the trucks go down the beach services people and animal services. At least they're, them being out there certainly does help.
And in the big scheme of things, I think the majority of people take their stuff or put it in the bins. It's the few that can cause quite a bit of trash out there. anyway.
Okay,
We're gonna metric TBD on this one. The measure of success is, yeah, we'll talk with Susan and get a little bit more information on this one.
Yes, yeah, let's
Okay.
talk to Susan and Chief Cornett on ideas and strategies and measurable goals there. So we have a little bit more work on that one.
Okay.
Goal 3.4, promote the maintenance of green spaces throughout the island. It is interesting that we kind of just got off the conversation about the tree fund, and this kind of came up.
Right. And I guess, Douglas, just for a matter of history on this, is this mainly like the rec center area, the park and the small parks that we have, or are we actually?
As I understand this goal it was, and it has happened to a limited degree, and I think it probably got put in there in reaction to the Greenbelt funds becoming available.
Okay.
And the city, so over time, the city has acquired the space near the Harris Teeter we talked about earlier. There has been discussion about, if could the city acquire the triangular parcel around Palm and 7th. The problem with this one is just that everything is so expensive, and there is, I do know that there's been some pushback on the idea of the city acquiring property at all, that we're not equipped to manage. We're a pretty streamlined operation, and we're not really equipped to manage properties. And
exactly, and that's kind of where I was going with this. And I wonder if the strategic plan will have something that we can rely on and come back to this. I'd be real cautious about making a goal that the city actually go seek out green space and purchase.
well, but if you read the goal, that's not what it says.
Okay.
The goal says maintenance of green spaces throughout the island. Doesn't talk about purchasing green space.
But in the strategy, then it says to investigate the potential for establishing small parks on city. Right. Okay, so it has to be. All right.
Is that a little, Vince, are you saying that? I kind of read that as a little conflicting between the goal and the strategy interpretation. It can be interpreted a different way. I look at that as possibly acquiring a green space.
Well, see, I think the goal is a good one, and I think it should be. Yeah. It can stand by itself.
Yep, I'm good with that.
Yeah.
Well, so it's my understanding that 3.4.1, that there was a time where it was believed that the city should acquire small parcels of land. So I do think that's what 3.41 is saying. Go out, and if they're available, get them. Is the group?
Like if I remember correctly, we were going to buy a lot on Front Beach, right?
Yeah, I remember that.
Yep, there was yes, there was talk about that.
I think that the fact that it says city owned makes it pretty clear that it's not a land grab.
Right.
But
well,
I mean,
I think you're investigating the potential for it to be city owned. So yeah, I see how there's confusion there. It is my belief that in years prior, it was seen as a goal to basically acquire new land. If this group thinks that's is not, we probably should clarify that.
Yeah, I don't think the momentum is here like it was then for acquiring space.
Rick, why do you say that?
Well, only, Bill, because I was involved at the time when Linda was trying to buy the lot on the beach. And she was throwing off, a lot of people were throwing off other pieces of property too, that maybe we should do this. Maybe, no, there was a lot of funding available at the time. I don't hear that anymore.
Right.
I don't,
Is it because the funding's not available, or is it because there's not a desire to do it?
So
I
the,
think it's common. Oh,
yeah, that Greenbelt Fund, it extracts, I mean, it expands and contracts over time, and currently, and we get a portion of whatever it is, a half-cent sales tax, and a portion of that comes back to the city. It accumulates over time. I want to say that it's here recently been in the neighborhood of 200,000. I think there was a time when it was significantly more, but it kind of gets, you know, it'll get an injection of money, and there's money available, and a portion of that money is made available to us. We then have to apply through a Greenbelt program to receive the money. But yeah, it has become, you know, even when the idea at the time of the oceanfront property was that we would just use that money. So it wasn't going to be really a use of residents' tax money or anything else.
it was to use or lose, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think if I understood the objection correctly, then it's that it was going to be used as kind of beach parking in a residential area, and it was interjecting, you know, visitors into an area where you may not necessarily want more visitors.
Well, you know, we could put a statement in there that, you know, will have opportunistic acquisition. You know, if somebody comes with the government comes with funds for acquisition, for property acquisition, and we use it or don't or lose it, then why not take advantage of it? But not to have it as an aggressive strategy.
Sure.
So then I think you were talking about the 501c or 501c earlier. Separate the city effort with either private effort or land conservancy or something like that.
Yep.
But you could extend this 3.41 to putting a park at the marina if that property became available, right?
That would be a city-owned, undeveloped greens, that would be a city. Should we take out the word undeveloped? I mean, if it's a green space, it's undeveloped. That might be something.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I like the goal. I think the strategy could be reworded maybe. I think that's potentially what we're getting at here.
You can make anything into a green space. Yeah.
So I may be splitting hairs, but it seems like the goal to me is talking about maintaining kind of existing.
Right.
And I think we're hearing that the strategy is more aimed at creating new potentially. And I don't know that it's clearly worded that way, but is there consensus that we should not be creating new? Is that kind of what I'm
creating or acquiring?
We don't support that as a goal or a strategy. That would be a new direction for I think traditionally the plan has been written in such that would be a good thing, you know, and
acquire.
Yes.
Yeah.
Acquire and establish, and, you know, so for right now, just for the sake of discussion, there is this triangle at 7th and Palm. I think in my reading of the comprehensive plan is saying that it would be a good thing for the city to have that and to maintain it as green space.
Yeah. I kind of agree with you, Douglas. I think that, we're dealing with today over a 10-year period or a 5-year period, things may change, but you know, I don't know about the rest of you, but everywhere I've lived, the city, either with or without partnership from private contributions and land conservancy, have taken the opportunity where they can, if they want to create green space, to acquire property. and prices fluctuate and funding can fluctuate, and there are ways to raise money. So I think what you're saying is maybe we shouldn't change the intention of this, or I don't know what you're saying.
Well, I guess I'm hearing the confusion of them, and I think that we should probably clarify that. So if it's my reading that it is to promote basically the creation and maintenance or maintenance, but I think I'm hearing mixed signals about whether or not that is a good thing.
Well, where my mind goes with this, when I'm reading these, I'm thinking about the drainage issues, and if it's an opportunity to maintain a space, small space as undeveloped or green space, then that's going to support that initiative as well. So in lieu of further development, but I don't think that the strategy exactly reads that way. But I think the goal is good.
Yes, I would agree with Marty on that. My only concern is that do you open up the purchase of, buying a front beach lot for parking, and that's when we're all gone and somebody else looks at this and they say, oh yeah, well, it's in the plan. Yeah, we always wanted to do that. And I would have a concern with that, spending, taxpayers' money to put parking space in a residential area. I know it got squashed, but that there is always that potential.
Hey Vince, this quick question. I'm reading this as that we would buy this for green space, not to build a parking lot. Maybe I'm confused.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Well, you could
This is strictly for green space. I think to Marty's point, something that we don't keep paving over and taking away our permeable land here.
The parking doesn't have to be on.
You got to be careful.
Well, you know what I'm saying. Yeah, good point.
One of the reasons why we got away from wanting to turn that oceanfront lot into a park, because all of the draw and the parking density that would be created by turning a lot into a park.
Point.
But you hear the comment, well, we have some green space that can be used for parking if necessary.
Yeah, and I think, my personal feeling is that so the Greenbelt Committee, the Charleston County Greenbelt Committee, to me, they do kind of have this goal and they have strategies. And I do think that they, while it has to be somewhat passive and open to a degree, they do things like fund beach boardwalks. They do have parking in their green spaces. So I think that maybe is kind of what the group is getting at, that while true green space, kind of woods, is a desirable thing, or just a green park, a parking lot with a lot of things in it doesn't really fit maybe the goal of the strategy. So maybe that clarification is what it needs, and kind of clarifying we're not talking about beach parking lots.
Agreed.
Right.
Yeah, green space to be designated as such, and not to be
true green space.
True green space.
So what would anybody got a couple of words we could throw in here to clarify?
Maybe just take out establishing small parks.
How about establishing green space, and then, I don't know if you would say exclusive of parking, or but just investigate
establishing city-owned green spaces.
Undeveloped. It sounds like undeveloped is the key.
Okay, city-owned undeveloped green space. Yeah.
Designated.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
What about saying investigate the potential for the acquisition of properties that can be used for small parks, green space? You want to inquire, right?
So investigate the potential for establishing or acquiring city-owned undeveloped green spaces.
Yes.
I think that gets it.
Sure.
Investigate the potential for establishing or acquiring city-owned undeveloped green spaces, correct? Is that what you said?
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah. Does that sound good to everybody?
Yes.
Yes.
Look at that.
Say it again.
Wow. Hey, did I miss something, or did we skip strategy 332? Or was I out missing that one?
Oh, I think we did. All right, don't derail us now. We're almost.
We're hearing the dinner bell.
Investigate the potential for establishing or acquiring city-owned undeveloped green space.
Correct.
All right.
So is that a yes for it supports the vision?
Yes.
Yes.
And right now it's probably, is that a yellow or red, or what do we want to put it on?
I would say that we're kind of on stall. To me, we're on stall mode on that one. I mean, that's something that we're not really actively doing because there's not funding.
So do we want to just classify it as, if it's on hold or we're unfunded, we'll call it a red for now?
I think so. That was in kind of a category, yeah, that it's not really happening.
Okay, and is the measure of success as the city establishes its a green space?
Yes. We do not have any funds other than there are limited funds in the Greenbelt kind of assigned to us, but they're not.
So it's a no, and funding efforts would have to be defined.
It is a known funding source. It's just not much there now.
Okay, limited funding sources.
Limited, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So we have lost our secretary.
Okay.
We have also been going for close to 2.5 hours. Do you all want to continue down? You want to continue, or do you want to break?
Wrap it up.
Maybe we should break.
Do we want to just finish 332, maybe revisit that and then break? Then we could just keep moving forward when we get back.
Yeah.
So 332.
Then we'll call it a day on that.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So
That way we finish off the goal, yeah.
So I personally think that, so since this plan has been written, the city has enacted a beach preservation fund. And I think that fund accumulates, I think it's close to about 400,000 a year. We have historically done about a $10 million project every 7 or 8 years. The majority of that construction is funded by the residents of Wild Dunes because it's typically happens primarily on private, inaccessible beaches. So I think that we are in better shape on that strategy than we were at the time of drafting this this plan. So I think it's the same strategy, but I just think we're in a better we're kind of in a better place now.
I think we're green, Douglas.
Yeah, they were green. And it is funded. I would say that we've kind of.
Is the measure of success is that the level of erosion is under relative control right now or something? Or?
Yeah.
Yes.
What
Okay.
does that funding
Mitigation.
split look like, Douglas? Do you know?
Um, no, I don't, I really don't know the split. Other than knowing that, like I said, it's typically about 10 million and the city contributes a bit, the state contributes a bit, and the Wild Dunes residents, get assessed the majority of it.
I think it's about a third.
I don't, well, the city also does the permitting. I don't think it's a third. I think, I would say that it's like, well, 60, 20, 20, something like that. It's just,
Oh, okay.
so everybody good with leaving that in there, making it green?
Yep.
Yes.
Measure of success is a dry and, a wide and dry beach.
Wide and dry.
Wide and dry.
Can you
Wide.
can you make one change on there and say support efforts to minimize the impact of erosion to both ends of the island?
Oh, yeah, on the ends.
Ends is plural.
I'm sorry, what is that again?
To minimize the impact of erosion on both ends of the island.
Okay.
I know this implies it the way it's written, but it's not as obvious.
You know, I really haven't looked at it that hard, but I will say that there are properties that are near the end, but not really at an end. I mean, they're kind of maybe a half mile in from the end. So I don't know. It raises do we need, I mean, do we only support it at the ends, or, I mean, we would support it anywhere the need arises, wouldn't we?
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, maybe that's the right way. On the island.
Erosion throughout the island?
Yeah, as the
Yeah.
need arises, basically.
So you're saying just eliminate on the ends. So if you just leave it, support the efforts to minimize the impact of erosion of the island, including beach nourishment projects, just
Yeah.
eliminate.
I think so.
Yeah.
As the need, so yeah, support efforts to minimize the impact of erosion throughout the island, including beach nourishment projects as the need arises. Is that?
I like that. I think it's implied that we wouldn't re-nourish something that didn't need it, but
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
so are we okay to go back to our agenda?
Regularly scheduled program? Yeah.
Yeah, it just looks like 3 items left.
Yeah, and they will be quick.
Okay.
So are we good to we'll work on what we have so far in the natural resources element, hopefully finish that up at our next meeting, but we'll have some drafts ready for review at the next meeting, and we'll start on the next element in the schedule, which escapes me now, but do we know what that was? It transportation, I think, is next.
You had natural resources, community facilities, and transportation were the first 3 you talked about doing. And the community facilities has 9 goals and 25 strategies. This one had 5 goals and 11 strategies.
So I have transportation next on our schedules.
Okay, good. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that works.
So we'll start in on transportation and hopefully kind of wrap up natural resources next time.
Great.
Sounds like a plan.
Yep.
So,
Scott, thanks for putting that together. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
thank you, Scott. That was very useful.
Yep.
Um, update on drainage planning. We do have the permits in hand for the small projects now.
Yay.
The council is considering, they have not executed the agreement with Thomas and Hutton to handle the bidding and the construction administration. They've given us a price on doing that, and I think that I think that's been looked at favorably by council at the Public Works Committee, but that will make its way through Ways and Means and full council this month. So that should get that underway. We talked last month about the potential for the Planning Commission to see the bid packet. That the first one will be the small projects, but I will distribute that. There will be, I don't know, we'll see. When we get it, ideally the timing would be that it gets put out, we then meet, and if there are any comments, we can get it back to Thomas and Hutton. It might be that the timing doesn't work out beautifully, so it may be that if you have comments, you need to give them to me via email to just not stall the project any more than it already has been stalled. We definitely want to get it done in the slow months, so we are kind of under the gun to get that ball moving. Would have thought it'd be done by now, but we'll. So that's kind of coming to a head on the small projects. The bigger projects, we are still working on that. We are trying to set up a meeting with Wild Dunes regarding the work that's going to need to take place on the golf course. We also have work to do on the offsetting. We do have some environmental impacts that we have to offset with the Corps of Engineers, and we're trying to work through that kind of technicality of how to cost effectively, basically how to do that in the cheapest way we can. But the bigger projects is also progressing on nicely. Any questions on drainage?
No.
Okay, next
Not for me.
next on the agenda, the MOU. So I did meet with the Water and Sewer Commission staff this morning. They are planning to make a request next Tuesday at the Ways and Means Committee meeting, a request to council to consider approving their bond request for $16 million. They have also indicated that they would execute, if they could, which they said they thought that they could, that they would execute the memorandum of agreement next week. So we'll see.
Okay.
Wow. Wow.
Wow. Good thing we left it on the agenda.
Yeah, see, well, I
Yeah.
took one more month and something would happen. After 18 months of nothing happened.
Hug your.
That's good news. Yeah.
I have gotten a little bit lost on who wants a tour and has not been able to do it. Vince, Scott, and Rick, have you all?
I had a tour.
I didn't.
You did not, and Vince, you have not.
I have not.
Okay, so I will get the two of you. And anybody else need to?
That was very helpful.
Good.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for setting that up.
Yeah, thanks, Jim.
So that's it on the MOU. And then short-term rental recommendations. Those successfully made it through first reading last month, and they will be on council's agenda for second reading and ratification and a public hearing at this council meeting. So those are moving along as planned.
Hey, Doug,
Yes.
any chance in your free time if you could update our our list of accomplishments?
Oh, the matrix. I don't know if I think I distributed it last month. I don't know that we've accomplished anything. If we have, we'll update it.
No update.
I may have to wait until council meets next Tuesday to update it as an accomplishment with the passage of the short-term rental recommendations.
Perfect.
Okay, we'll do that time.
Very good.
That's all I have.
Okay.
Any other business?
Anybody want to make a motion to?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all.
Done deal.